we have our very special guest. We are now talking to Chiefs Pro Bowl pass rusher, Tamba Hali. What's going on, Tamba?
I'm just kicking back, man. I can't even skip your story. My condolences to you and
Thank
your family. I can only imagine it's a hard week for you. Just hearing that, all of our prayers go towards you at this
Thank
moment.
you so much, Tamba. It's sad because I lost a nephew a couple of months ago. My sister lost her 4-month-old son. My godson, he passed away. It was a freak situation. And then losing my cousin, he was actually one of the cousins that came to my nephew's my nephew's wake, and he's gone. He was the one that actually carried the coffin to the ground. It just seems family comes and it goes, and you don't realize how short life is, and you don't realize how important life is, and you should enjoy every second, every minute, every time you wake up in the morning, and thank God that you have your health.
Very true, man. Very true. Very relatable to me, but our prayers go to your family.
Thank you.
Everyone that's involved with that.
So, Tamba, you have been out of the league for quite a few years. And
5 years.
Yes. We're talking about possibly, maybe a Hall of Fame nominee. You had a tremendous career. Now into his music life. We will talk about that in just a few moments. But how are you doing? What is it like being retired and just enjoying life?
It's a lot of work, not easy. Football was much easier. I get to be around my family, my wife, my kids. That's hard. They expect daddy to always be there. But it's also fun being able to relax. I have to make weight every week. It's like, man, I got to make weight 260. And it's like, now I don't have to worry about that. But then I do. It's like anytime my weight starts creeping up. But it's fun, man. I'm enjoying the time doing things that I enjoy doing. I love doing music. And I spend most of my time doing it and connecting with good people.
You're still fairly a young guy. I'm actually older than you, Tamba.
Really?
Actually, a year older than you. I'm 39. You're 38.
Oh,
so it's crazy that you're 38 years old, your career is over, and you're still very, very young, and you got your whole life in front of you. Why don't we get into what you're doing off the field? You have right now a record company called Relume Records. Tell us a little bit how you got into this and what made you fall in love with music so much.
I grew up in the church. You grew up singing. I played the bongos. My mom is a minister. My stepdad's a minister. So I grew up in the church singing. So that's where my music side come from. When I got to the country, 94, I couldn't read or write, and my dad got us hooked on phonics. Now I'm learning how to read, but we're rhyming. And growing up in New Jersey, so in New Jersey, it's all rappers up there, it's all the Biggies, the Pacs, the Cam'rons, the Wu-Tang. So my stepbrother had left all his mixtapes, all his 80s mixtapes. I was so hip to it. I loved the sound when I got to the States rapping, just rapping was cool, rhyming and putting words together. I did it in college. I just did it for fun, kept me busy, stayed out of trouble, but in the league, when I built this studio behind me, and I just spent most of my time in the off season just writing music. I signed an act, Gilly the Kid. We worked around each other for about 5-6 years. Now he's on to his podcast is doing pretty awesome. But I signed him, a couple producers. I signed another artist named Stars. I knew I could rap, but the problem was the league is not going to accept you trying to rap and play football. It's really strict. Like, you got to be into this football thing you choose. That's your livelihood. It's true. Like, you have to put in time. So I kind of did it on the side. Afterwards, I just felt like I could do this. Let me go ahead and do it. That's money into myself instead of putting it in other people.
Tabo, you were actually born in Liberia, which is in West Africa, and you were mentioning that you moved to the U.S. in 1994. So musical influences in both African music and also hip-hop and other stuff you got into. Who were some of the specific musical influences you had?
In Africa, I wouldn't even be able to tell you the artists, but it's definitely the sound that's what's kind of emerging now. They call it Afrobeat now. Mm-hmm. But back then, the music was a bit more fast. In the States, you're talking about Jay-Z. If I had to want to model myself, Jay-Z, Cam'ron, Jadakiss, Biggie, and Pac. I grew up in that era, 94 and up. And so I kind of saw all of that saga going down. I just enjoyed the music. Those were my biggest influence. And over time, 50 Cent and Drake and those guys, I still listen to hip-hop. It got better. What Kendrick and what Drake is doing with the words, it's not BS. Like, you got to really come with it. You got to be good at the craft, and you got to be good good with your storytelling. Lil Wayne, one of my biggest influences was Lil Wayne because he just took it far left and he was still able to have clarity with it. So those guys are like our age, but yet, I was in a whole different realm, but I listened to them.
As everybody knows, we are talking to Chiefs Pro Bowl pass rusher Tamba Hali. I think 90s hip-hop is so much better than the new age hip-hop. I do not like the new age hip-hop. Kendrick Lamar is all right. You see what's going on with some of these different artists that are coming out. They're talking about shoes and socks and things that make absolutely no sense. Who cares? Yes, the rhyming has gotten a little bit better, but I think the afterthought of the 90s with the Wu-Tang Clan, and not only do I do sports radio, I'm a DJ. I've traveled all around the country. I used to be on tour with Mary J. Blige. I went on tour with Rob Bass.
Wow, that's big time.
Yeah. So
we need to connect, man.
Absolutely.
You got to spin some of my records,
absolutely.
man.
I do private parties now. I've been all over the country, all over the world DJing. Met a lot of people, a lot of influencers, and I was at Kanye West's Yeezus album release party, so I know Nas. I know a lot of different hip-hop artists here from New York, so I've been around it for a very, very long time. So the music and the way music is transitioned, and now everybody's using different clips of different tracks, and everybody's trying to change the way music is. It is different. That's for damn sure. But why don't we get into your career? Because you had a fantastic football career, played for Kansas City all those years, dominant. At one point, you were one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Let's go through your career. You were drafted by Kansas City in 2006, grew as a football player. Tell us a little bit about the time that you were in Kansas City from 2006, really all the way to 2017.
Being drafted by Herm Edwards, it was a big deal. I was a huge Jets fan. I love watching the Jets. I wasn't big on the NFL, but Herm and Carl Peterson coming into State College and watching my pro day and then picking me in the 20th pick. It was a huge deal. I get there. I play with veteran players, Ty Law. I think Willie Roof had retired at that time, but we had a Hall of Famer guard, Will Shields, Trent Green. I played with some really good caliber players, good people, but then it became hard. All of those guys left, and we were kind of like starting over, and then we lost Lamar Hunt, Sr. So it was a whole new organization coming together. Clark, who's the chairman right now, the owner, one of the 4 owners, did a tremendous job over the time hiring different coaches. But at the time, it was always in the air. You had to make the team. So it wasn't an easy transition. Some guys have. I had to go through a bunch of different head coaches, but it all started to pan out when we got Scott Pioli. Scott Pioli paid me, but he brought in a different scheme. He brought in a 3-4 scheme with Romeo Crennel, and we had Charlie Weiss. And then Charlie Weiss only spent maybe a year or so, and then he was out. But Romeo was able to use me in a 3-4 scheme so I could become the pass rusher that I eventually became. And then we get Andy Reid because, there's a small transition there, some mishaps. Things didn't go the way that Romeo Crennel wanted. And we get Andy Reid, and he's a whole different type of coach. His approach to the game, he changed our culture. We were so accustomed to losing. Everything changed. Players coach, but he demands you love football. You need to come to work. All the little things. He kind of reminded me of Joe. Joe didn't have a lot of rules, but if you couldn't abide by those few rules that he had, it wasn't going to work out for you. Andy was hands-on, so if he was going to release a player, I wouldn't say captain, but the leaders on the team, he would discuss it with them. He'd say, I think we're going to let this guy go, keep you involved. But yeah, my time with Andy Reid, I always talk to coach and I say to him, I would love to, if I ever, anyone that I want to be like is you, because he never wavered in his approach towards what he was trying to accomplish when he got to the Chief. And that was like the highlight of my career because that's when I started to get to win games. That's when we got to the playoff, won some playoff games. And we had a drought for quite a bit of time there since 93. So Andy Reid was like the pinnacle to now back into the playoff. And now look what Patrick and his guys are doing over there. So my time with the Hunts, it was a tremendous ride. I'm indebted to that family, that organization. They just recently had made me an ambassador for the Chiefs. So I work with an organization. It's a nonprofit organization. And we raise funds and we help the community. We raise money and then put it back into the community. It's a pretty cool gig that I'm a part of here in Kansas City.
So you mentioned you started your career with Herm Edwards. We know about his personality, what he could be. So what was he like on and off the field? And do you have a particular Herm Edwards story that stands out?
Herm was a player's coach. Herm was not going to lie to you.
We play to win the game.
he wasn't going to lie to you because he knew these are grown men. You got to kind of shoot them straight. I remember one time Herm said, I don't care what you got to do before the game. And then he broke out and said, back in the day when we play, the professors would be walking down on Berkeley doing that stuff. He said, I don't care what you got to do. Whatever you got to do, just make sure you show up on Sunday and play. And it was just straight to the point. Because he knew these guys would do whatever it takes to get on the field and have a good game. And he wasn't going to get in their way. I remember that story vividly. I didn't get a long time with Herm, but I loved Herm because he just cut it the way it should. He told you the truth. And then you had to be a man about it and go do your job.
We are talking to Chiefs Pro Bowl pass rusher Tamba Hali. Now, Tamba, you watch the game now, and the game's completely changed from when you were playing. Really, in the last 5 years, with some of the rule changes, obviously you can't hit over the shoulder now, and it's become a game of sometimes baby-like. You might as well play flag football now because that's what the NFL is becoming. But really, some of these pass rushers now, one of the Watt brothers dominate the league last year. When you were playing, it was Michael Strahan, it was you, it was another player that played with you on the other side. Justin Houston, another dominant force.
Jared Allen.
Even in Indianapolis, Mathis and all the different players that you saw over there. What do you think the changes have been really at your position and some of these young pass rushers that have come into the league?
I don't think my position have changed much. I think it's still, you got to go out there and play. You're still going to get choked up. You're still going to get blocked. You just got to play. I think what's changed is we have to be more conscious of our peers. We enjoy going out there and knocking heads, but it's a traumatic game. It's a car crash collision for 3 hours, 60 minutes, time stop and going. So you're doing that for a long period of time. It's obviously going to have a toll on your future. And so I think the league is trying their best to have guys more conscious on how you go about knocking people out. Of course, the fans want to see it. Gladiator style. Come through, get everything knocked over. But these are men that have children, that have family, that you want them to be able to enjoy life after football, even do more, even become leaders in the community, something. You don't want them to turn into mushrooms and vegetables afterwards. They're just nothing. I applaud the league for kind of looking into it. The rules, it has to continue to evolve because the guys are getting bigger and stronger. You know, when I was coming out, I wasn't as strong. These guys coming out, they're smaller than me, but they're lifting more than me. They're running faster. And player caution is a huge thing, and I applaud the league for it.
So growing up in Africa, and specifically in Liberia, you didn't get the exposure to football that maybe you see now with some of these other African players coming into the NFL. So what sports did you get into first when you were growing up in Africa, and how did you get into football when you moved here to the States?
First, I played soccer. They call it soccer here. It's football there, but that's what I grew up on. That's the only sport we really kind of grew up on. When I got to the States, I got into basketball. I have a little height, and I enjoyed moving on the court and bouncing the ball and going to the park and learning how to play. How did I get in football? It was my gym teacher. He was the defensive coordinator, Ed Clemick. He always said, once you get to the high school, play football. I really didn't want to play football. I didn't understand the game. And when I got to high school, I really didn't understand the game. But I enjoy hitting. That's something I don't know. It just came natural. It's like we lined up and we go here, get the guy with the ball. Simple. So I line up and I do it as fast as possible. And then played right tackle freshman year in high school and blocked this guy in front of you. I didn't even realize I had to remember that. So every play, it's like I'll ask Warren. Warren will be right next to me, and I'll ask Warren, what do I do? He will point to the guy. Block this guy. Block this guy. So the guy knows it's coming, but that was my life starting out with football. But it was Ed Clemick who encouraged me to play football in high school.